sitting here in just this stillness and observing what comes and goes as objects in the sense fields or possibly in the mind, memories, judgments, ideas, opinions, doesn't matter. Just leaves falling into the river and floating past the awareness. Make no comment, just observe. Just observe. Make no comment. It's just a leaf. Floating by. Those of you in the Zendo, please come and sit in front of the altar, if you would please. Those of you on Zoom, turn towards your computer screen, and thank you. The title of this evening's talk is The Tyranny of Believing. Tyranny of Believing. I gave a talk many years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, called The Tyranny of Belief. I have no idea what I said. I have no idea what I'm about to say next. It is possible. It's possible to not know what in the hell is going to happen next. It's possible to live in an open dimension. It will not feel like, oh my, I'm in such an open dimension. I feel like a flower or like a sunbeam. Not talking about that kind of stuff. You're in the midst of a really, really difficult world called samsara. And the main feature of this was pointed out 2,500 years ago as life is suffering. Always. It's very, very difficult. the tyranny, believing is basically talking about the oligarchy of the mind stream, the ego that cannot function in consciousness as a separate one or being or identity without some kind of reference points. And those involve belief, disbelief, same thing really, taking a position on anything. You don't need to take a position on anything, especially beforehand. It's like it says in the politics we've been hearing lately, don't obey in advance. It's very similar. Don't believe your thoughts. Don't disbelieve them and don't ignore them. Just receive them like leaves falling from a tree into a river that's flowing past. You can do this. It is possible. Is it easy? No. And that's why it feels impossible, because we look for results. And there aren't any. There are no results for this. It's better than that, as you've heard me say hundreds of times, and it's worse than that. It's worse because it's the absolute devastation of ego. You really realize the truth of suffering right here. Don't cover it up anymore. And it's better than that because consciousness is liberated. It's like there's a body, and sure, it's your body. It's your hand, your fingernails. It's you, it's you. Very, very simple index of me and my stuff, my ideas, my Timex. All of those relativities can be received without particularly attaching to them. If you start to attach, you start to operate out of hope and fear, it becomes tyrannical. It's just you just are not free. You may not realize it. You may think you're free as a bird because you believe your thoughts, you have your ideas, your judgments, your opinions, and your opinions are based on this, this, and this, and there's therefore. Whole world is doing that. Look around, you see really, really intelligent men, women talking on the internet in different places, news media, whatever. They seem extremely intelligent. But you can also sense, especially if you have mind training, you can sense that there's a lot of clarity there in a relative way, but there's no ultimate understanding. If you're listening to me, you're probably looking for an ultimate understanding. Otherwise, why would you listen to this kind of malarkey? I don't promise you anything. One disappointment after another. So it's tyrannical, and it's an oligarchy in the sense that you don't look at whatever shows up. You go from what shows up to what you think about it, believe about it. You project onto it. You have a set little egg crate here full of a dozen eggs of your ideas, your opinions, your judgments, and whatever shows up, you've got an egg for that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to live that way. You can live in an open, this is a simple way of putting it, an open dimension of not knowing what this is. If you do that, then there is a possibility that you will see that what this is an illusion. But if you think you know what this is, if you keep trying to figure it out, grasp at it, shut down on it, get the right thought, make the right decision. Don't hammer yourself with trying to make the right decisions. Please don't do that to yourself. That is the height of arrogance. Of course, it's not going to show up like that, because arrogance never shows up as arrogance. Actual arrogance is invisible, especially to one who is arrogant. They just think they're what? Right. Make some sense to you, Carmen?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. It does. We see it, not only see it in others, but we see it in ourselves. We see that we're just stuck on our ideas and our opinions, and sometimes we revert to those. It is not about never having a negative thought or never having an opinion. And you've heard me say, I'll say it again, I've said it hundreds of times, and I'm always talking this way. I've said this hundreds of times. It's about awareness. about the awareness, because the awareness does not show up and it cannot disappear. The consciousness does not show up, it cannot go away. But the belief in a self, an idea, a particular something or other that shows up is an illusion. And it will persist if you push on it. Aggression, it will persist if you fiddle with it, explain it, justify it, or anything, passion, or if you ignore it, look away from it. It's very simple teachings of the Buddha, goes back thousands of years. And of course, going back to the proverbial square one, how do you deal with this? You train your mind to watch the way you buy and sell and ignore, the way you actually get into a merchandising mentality in your mind where you're pushing some things away. Don't have to do that. Grasping and pulling things into your network of whatever it may be. You don't have to do that. But what drives us to do that, to do such a thing? It's fear. It's fear of being wrong, fear of making a mistake, fear of what somebody's going to think if they see what we're doing here. As a Dharma teacher, if I lived my life by what other people thought of what I was doing, certainly wouldn't be up here. I'd be somewhere trying to look good. So I'm suggesting this, not ordering you to do anything. I don't run your life. I'm not your boss. I'm just someone who has an understanding of something that I received from my teachers and from this incredible teaching called the Buddha's Dharma. And somewhere, there wasn't an event. Nothing actually happened. I just saw this in such a way that it seems like I can talk about it. But you don't have to agree with me if you can take exception to what I'm saying. I'm always inviting you. I used to say this more aggressively. I'm going to try to stop being so aggressive. Instead of saying, come and get me, I'm going to say, come and get me. How's that better? In other words, take exception to this. Show me, bring out your Wittgenstein. Show me, or your Nietzsche, or whatever. Bring out if you feel like there's some area in your understanding, even if it's based on Nagarjuna, Vasubandhu, or some other teacher, Dogen, use that and come and see if you can take this apart, what is being said here. Because you can. Because it's just an assemblage of ideas that are coming out of these vocal cords about something that is completely out of reach in the relative world. It has to be seen. You have to realize it. You have to realize what this is. Otherwise, we are hogtied by our beliefs, our opinions, our ideas, hopes and fears, judgments, evaluations, conclusions. We think we have to conclude things. No requirement anywhere, unless you set it up. Believe in your ideas or your conclusions. That being said, you may be flooded with, as you work with this, if you are working with it, which I presume you are somewhat, sitting still and watching what comes and goes, you may notice that sometimes that really gets ramped up and it seems like you're just being overwhelmed by your beliefs and your ideas and your fears. And then maybe 3 days later, especially in something like Ango, which is a lot of sitting, you may notice that it just tapers off and goes another way with no apparent cause at all. The causes and conditions that we assume about everything are just rainbows. There's nothing real there. Isn't it? Red and blue aren't separated, of course, but fundamentally they're just color. Tyranny, oligarchy, some aspect of consciousness that cannot stand to not have a reference point because it is threatened by not knowing who we are and what that is. Are there any questions?
Or divine, can we choose to not know?
The whole idea of choosing involves some kind of volition, some kind of doing. I think there's a little bit of that happening there. We begin to understand that. But what starts to come apart in that area, which makes it challenging and difficult, is the assumption that there's someone who's choosing. The identity part of it starts to become very unstable when we start to push in that area, especially if it is the substrate under that is a lot of awareness practice, a lot of sitting meditation where you spend many hours, many months, many years just watching at the movement of what arises in space and disappears. Illusion. You watch that. What doesn't come and go? Consciousness only. Space doesn't go anywhere. Doesn't appear, can't disappear. Come back to your question if I missed it.
Or divine, it seems like it's impossible to not have a position.
Well said. So what am I recommending?
Observe the positions that we take.
Yes, just observe. All you have to do is be aware of it. You don't have to change. You do not have to improve. I don't care what other teachers say. They're going to say something different than I say. Historically, traditionally, down through the centuries, lots of different ways of teaching this. Seems to be necessary to have lots of different ways because there are different ways of working with this kind of passion, aggression, and ignorance. My understanding is if you're aware of it, because then you are being respectful of all the causes and conditions that are countless that showed up right behind your ear that actually provides you with this particular. You didn't design this ear. You didn't design anything. Everything you see is dependently arisen pratitya sanupada, the ancient teaching, ancient and extremely powerful teaching. If you contemplate it, I highly recommend you contemplate it a lot so that you can see with your consciousness, with just what's receiving, the colors, the textures, the shapes, the sounds, just receive that, be a receiver of everything. Pay attention to what your sense fields are about. They are receivers. They do not produce things. If anything is being produced, it's the mind. It's the preference for this over that. Picking and choosing. So if you're aware, then I tell a little story about it. If you're aware of it and you don't push on it, if you're aware of it, you don't stop something or start something else or pick and choose or decide, then the whole thing, the whole warp and woof, to use that image of that situation, is seen as it is. And as it is means that parts of that warp and woof are not going to be set up in such a way that if you just give it a casual glance, you see one thing, that. But if you actually receive it as it is, you see the complete, incredible variation in dependent origination. It is, you can't see it. It's so much overwhelming that it even goes beyond any kind of counting or enumeration. In time and space, those other two illusions. And you begin to see that everything is just consciousness only. There are no separate parts anywhere. You have to see it. If you don't see it, you'll continue to think that something should be happening and you shouldn't have a toothache. Or that you, in my situation, I shouldn't have atrial fibrillation or whatever the hell it is. That shouldn't be happening. We should do something about that. Well, hopefully we can do something about it, but it's not, the right and wrong part is a misunderstanding. It's an astonishing misunderstanding. It's like saying some people shouldn't be murderers. That's a completely arrogant statement based on utter, I mean, you are the murderer. If you think you aren't, you'll continue to murder murderers. Or some other way of describing the shutting down of relative truth. Don't kill your thoughts. Start out with your thought. Practice on thoughts first. Don't kill them. Don't be a murderer. Everything that shows up has a right to be there based on dependent origination, simple teaching. Sometimes they're rough and have a difficult appearance, and sometimes they're smooth and flowing along. It's just the nature of the illusion that we are deluded by.
Gotcha, I'm going.
And Jen,
What is doing the believing?
the doing the believing way of talking about it is that part of consciousness that has been frightened into curling up into a ball and is operating out of paranoia and operating out of spiritual materialism, material materialism, psychological materialism, thinking that if you can just get the right handles and levers by looking at this world that you are deluded by because you think it's real, you can get control and you can get ahead and you can make more money than somebody else or have more. You just are buying into the illusion. Most of the world is doing that kind of materialism. So what is doing that is that part of the consciousness that is identified with a center, that has a central authority or oligarchy, so to speak. And it's not that there aren't oligarchies that are very kind and loving and take good care of their children and help their neighbors repair their lawnmower. I'm not saying that, but quite often when that's happening, that is about that person wanting to be seen, ego, as a kind, loving, helpful person. This is obvious everywhere. If you begin to train your mind, you will begin to see this big snow job happening everywhere. The kindest, most loving people are not doing this for you because they love you and want to give their life to you. If someone wants to do that, the bodhisattva path is invisible. If someone's doing that for you, you won't even know it. There's an invisible hero. If it's a hero that stands out, that's trying to get credit, they're trying to make sure that, am I being helpful to you? It's just exasperating sometimes because you could do this. You're all sitting here, you all have minds, you all have a eye, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, a lifetime. You've been here for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever it may be, but you have a lot of life experience. You have a lot of experience sitting down and holding still as a meditator. Some of you have decades doing this. And I'm saying just observe what shows up and don't agree with it. Passion, don't disagree with it. Aggression, and don't ignore it. If you can do that, eventually your true nature will reveal itself. It will not be an event. It's just that it will no longer be covered up. So it will not be something that happens in time and space because it is not part of the illusion that you're deluded by. More?
And Jim going, if there's not like a singularity, a real singularity, then how can this illusory thing be doing this believing?
So it gets that from buying into the polarized part of it. You talk to me, you talk to them, you have this emotion or that emotion. You've been around here for countless eons. The consciousness that shows up as Shajian is not limited to birth and death. It's not limited. The body mind is, and this is very convincing. You know, we're here and we wake up in the morning, it's time for breakfast, or it's time to do this or do that, or all the various other things that are just totally convincing us that we're here and we're somebody, and we have neighbors and they know our names, and our cat knows who we are. It doesn't wake up and say, oh my God, there's a state stranger in the house. No, all this is all an amazing cooperation, not based on someone cooperating with someone else, although I think that's not a bad idea in some ways, but based on that it's completely not separate. So therefore, even though in your case, I'm thinking of Hachi, your cat looks like a separate being, although you're very close to him, you're not, you are that. And Hachi is you. I'm using that because that's a strong polarity in your life that I happen to know about. They're not separate, they're separated. Over here is the cat and over here you are, but fundamentally not separate. Consciousness only. You can live in that. You know, you're a young guy, you have a lot of years left, more than likely. You can live the rest of your life without having any opinions. Not that you don't have opinions, without having any beliefs, not that you don't have beliefs or disbeliefs or any positionality. you have to see that the positionality itself is unreal. And that's how it comes apart, not by pushing the belief away, so into disbelief or ignoring it. You don't have to do anything with it. Just be aware. More? Thank you for those questions. Yes, sir.
Nathan Bowing. I feel that many of my beliefs are unconscious. And I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions for unearthing them, or if that's just the role of the teacher to show your unconscious beliefs.
Some of that, I think, but don't unearth anything. The most important thing that you should do is you do it all the time. You've been doing it. Here, sit every day, sit as much as you can, as much as your particular body, your health, your job, your whole situation will allow you to do that. Get to a position where you're sitting still and watching what continues to ramp up and move. You're already doing that. And you've been here for what, 6 weeks or something like that, and gonna be here for a few more weeks. So you're already doing that. I presume you do that at home too. You're sitting meditation there and other places. So it's just a long path, but the important thing about that path is to receive whatever shows up, no matter how grimy, no matter how gritty, no matter what, just receive it. If it shows up in your life, in your mind stream, it's meant to be there. It doesn't mean you have to approve of it, or that you shouldn't disapprove of it. If you do disapprove, just notice that you disapprove. You don't like that. It's awareness rather than any kind of secondary validation that it's okay to disapprove, okay to approve, okay. No check marks. More?
Nathan Bowing. Did you say that those beliefs often show up in the form of story about yourself?
I think it does. What do you think? How's it look to you?
Seems to be so.
Seems to be some kind of a commentary on who we are, how we're doing, where we're going, what we like, what we don't like, what people think of us, what we think of ourselves, our description of ourselves. All of these are dependently risen. There's no truth to any of it. And going back to part of your question, yes, it may be necessary for the teacher, the teaching person, to point some of that out to you. But that teacher-student relationship is so incredibly different for everyone. Some people will never have a teacher. Some people will have a teacher and never never listen to them, or listen to them and never hear what they say, but hear what they think they say. Anything else? Yes,
When you're vowing,
you know,
does the teacher know what the student thinks the teacher said?
the teacher knows that the laptop has a low battery. I'm hoping the right person will hear that. So coming back to your question, I think a little bit, I follow your question. I think that, I don't know if there's like a concrete response where that's always the case. It's not always so, but a little bit of that happens there. But it's so variable that even the teacher, he, she, or they are not going to be able to make a standard out of anything. There's no way you're teaching the Dharma based on your understanding of the Dharma, which the idea is to come out of consciousness only, and actually see what it is that what this is, rather than have a bunch of ideas or thoughts about it. Not that ideas and thoughts about it won't line up in some way based on all the teachings down through the centuries, from Dogen to Nagarjuna or Vasubandhu and so on. Did I get close to what you're?
I don't know, I was distracted.
Well, I wasn't.
Say that again.
No, no. I would say somewhat. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to repeat my question.
Go ahead.
Based on what your statement was a little bit ago. Does the teacher know what the student thinks the teacher said?
I would have to say no. I say I would have to. I'm saying there's like I tried to say initially, there's a little bit of room in there. But you can, if there's light coming through the door, you can use the light, but you can't open that door. If there's some light coming through, to use that image, that you can use the light comes through, but you can't make it wider. Can't control this. You cannot control dependent origination. It's an astonishing understanding, and it's completely disappointing until there's a fundamental realization that there wasn't anybody that was even bothered by the whole thing. More?
Yes, but I just lost it.
Show.
Shabawang. Just in the answer just before Unio's question, you said you can live in consciousness. Who is living in consciousness? Bhavin?
It's just a way of talking about it, Chisho. You have to say something. And we have this incredible illusion of I'm over here with my clothes, you're over there, and we're all in different places, and this illusion is incredibly powerful. When our Dharma talk is over, everybody goes a different way, and people maybe go out to eat, or they go home, they go to bed, or depending on what part of the country they're in. Just so many different things, and it just perpetuates the illusion. So coming back to your question, the illusion that they're in consciousness, that there is somebody aligned with this particular body, or that body, or any body, it's so convincing that the identity part just seems obvious. We could say we just take it for granted, somewhat along the lines of what Nathan was asking about, that there's some areas that something is going on there, but we can't quite see it clearly. So we kind of get a little bit suspicious that there's things happening in consciousness that we can't track particularly. I don't know if I'm getting it close to the area you're talking about. So if you go to identity, who is it? Then I need to say it this way: consciousness. If you realize your true nature and realize your consciousness only, it will not be an event. There'll be no credential. You won't feel like you're any better than anybody or any worse than anybody. You might be amazed that even anybody wants to listen to you at all, because you make no sense. This does not make sense. This doesn't even make sense on Arcturus. You ever heard of Arcturus? Well, it's not one of the moons of Jupiter. And I'm just saying, and no matter where you go, it's not going to make sense. Not with the balls of dirt in the middle of nowhere around much larger balls of fire. This does not make sense. Do not add this up and say, oh, now I understand. You'll never understand this in the relative way unless you shrink it down into a particular philosophy, a particular way of using logic, a particular way of using reason, a particular way of even using constructing a stick-built home. There's a certain logic and reason the way that works, and there are laws there. They're very powerful, convincing. But to come back to the question, as I understand it, consciousness realizes consciousness, and the whole separation part is just gone. It doesn't disappear so much that it never was there. It's like Koban said when he translated the Heart Sutra: falling apart, falling apart, falling apart, falling apart. Nothing to do. Everything all at once. Just another way of making a relative commentary on something that never occurred. And what fell apart? The whole belief system that Koban had about the nature of himself, the nature of his society, Japan, the nature of Buddhism, nature of the teachings, the nature of his teachers, the nature of his students, falling apart, falling apart, falling apart. He's an astonishing teacher. Further, Shisho. Thank you, sir. Yes.
On the vine. Am I undoing any work on the cushion by all the positions I take?
No, it's just about being aware of them. They may be more and more. The more you sit, you may realize how more and more kind of, what would be the statement, how full of yourself you are, how self-centered you are, all those things. Is that what you're addressing? Just look at those. None of those are real. The very nature of the illusion is other. And a basic teaching that I didn't invent, but it was here way before any of us got here, is everything is empty of other. Everything is empty of other. So this is an illusion. The otherness of this is an illusion. It's unreal, but it doesn't mean it isn't solid. Doesn't mean you can't suddenly just walk out in front of a bus and nothing will happen. Yes,
Wilbur, how is it that we are not reinforcing our identity?
how is it that we are not, when?
Reinforcing our identity with all the positions and
You're not reinforcing it as long as you're observing it and you're not shoving it away, trying to manipulate it or change it, trying to squeeze some happiness out of something that's basically knotted up in terms of passion, aggression, and ignorance, trying to get that to kick out some kind of candy bars. Don't do it. Receive, 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 receive this incredible world. It is such a gift. There isn't even any giver. It's sometimes called threefold purity. There's no gift. There's no giver. There's no receiving. It's an illusion. If you see it, you can be in the illusion. You hit your knee and make a sound. You can get a toothache. You can walk in the other room and bump into a door and hurt yourself. The illusion is just perpetuating itself all the time by the very structure of relative truth. But your understanding has gone beyond all of that. It doesn't matter what happens. You're not concerned how you feel. You're not concerned what happens next. And because there is no next, everything is empty of next, empty of other. That doesn't mean the illusion disappears, but you see it's an illusion. You walk through the illusory room. Other people walk through a room they think is real. And so someone sees you walk through the illusory room and you hit your foot on the chair leg and you squeak. You say, "Oh, I thought this was an illusion, Sokuzan." That's what Marpa's student said to him when I think his son passed away. Someone could correct me if you know the story. And he got all upset because his son died. And his students were saying, "Well, I thought this was an illusion." And he says, "Yeah, but this is a super illusion. The son died." So he had a hard time with that. It doesn't mean there won't be intense feelings. Easy for me to say with my peripheral neuropathy, which is extremely difficult for me to say that it's unreal. I know it's unreal, but it's still very, very painful and difficult and challenging, just like anyone else who has anything from headaches to sore body parts or whatever. My daughter, Kateri, has been having a lot of difficulty with an ongoing sitting. And because she's having body challenges. So it doesn't mean those things won't come and go, but they're dependently arisen. And the one who sees that is unreal. Consciousness sees that. If consciousness sees that, it not only sees the singularity in the illusion, but it sees the entirety of it. It doesn't mean that it sees in Farmington, New Mexico, on Main Street, 3 blocks from East Avenue, that there's an oak tree that's limb is broken. It doesn't mean you're seeing that, but it's there. That broken limb is everywhere. What you see is dependent origination. Therefore, everything you see is that broken limb. Everything you hear is that limb when it cracked. Not separate, not separate, not separate. You can see this is possible. It won't feel like a miracle, but you may not have any other word for it.
Yvonne, what is the nature of everything?
Not separate.
So when Coben translated the Heart Sutra, falling apart, what was falling apart if everything is not separate?
Well, my understanding, and I didn't talk to him about it, was because when I contemplated the way he translated that, it seemed like, relative to my understanding, what's happened over here is that the idea of who you are and yourself and your identity just starts to dismantle, deconstruct just by looking at it. If you try to fiddle with it, meddle with it, push it down, improve yourself, get better, not have a temper, not be jealous of anybody. If you try to do that, you're participating in that not only the merry-go-round, but the oligarchy, the prison of belief, disbelief, ignoring. It's painful, and the world is doing it. We're torturing ourselves. the whole world, watch the news for 20 minutes anywhere. The really, really reasonable, intelligent, sane people who have have a kind outlook are still confused by this and want to fight with the difficulty rather than understand it. And there's only one direction to go to understand that. Watch me here, please. Don't forget. Don't forget the whole damn talk, but remember this. Here's where you find it. And if you find it, you won't see anything. You will not have a result. If you have results, you have work to do. The mountain just gets bigger. Some people are ready for this, some are not. Is another way of saying that is everybody's ready for this and everybody's not ready for this. It would have to be that way, wouldn't it? Right, Jacob?
I agree.
I knew I could get a, what is that called? Thumbs up. Have a few minutes. If anyone has further questions, I'd be happy to respond. Hopefully. Just hold your hand up. Yeah. Yes,
When you're bowing, going back to your title, Tyranny of Believing, and then you talked about the oligarchy of the mind stream.
yes.
Do we have any choice about following that oligarchy of the mind stream?
The whole idea of choice there is difficult because we're constantly swamped by proof that we're making choices. I can pick this up, I can put this down. I can go have lunch, I can decide not to have lunch. I can do so many things. I can move my hands around or I can fold them in my lap. So it looks like we have choices. But when it comes to this oligarchy, it's a matter of observing it. Just see it, just feel it. Whatever shows up in the mind stream, just receive, just think that. Do nothing with it other than that. That's why in sitting meditation, the way that meditation we do, of course, not everyone does this, people do different kinds. Sit down, hold still, and watch the movement. And if you do that and you feel like you're watching the movement, you probably are not. You're probably daydreaming. But is that wrong? No, daydream all you want. You may have to daydream for 5 or 6 years before you realize you're daydreaming. You have it? Please. Keep going.
It's,
Yes,
when you're bowing, just looking at how to intercept that tyranny of believing. When the thoughts are provoked and are ramped up with an apparent choice about to be launched,
yes.
what is the antidote?
So it's a good word, antidote, and there's the Tibetan tradition, especially Atisha's 7 points of mind training, all kinds of advice on how to work with this. I'm not against any of that. Go read whatever you want to. Get all the help you can. Read The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva. Study it. Read it over and over again. Maybe there's some help in there that I'm not able to give you. But my understanding, based on what I'm looking at, is it's necessary to have some repetition there, where you just watch things come and go. You watch it come in. You watch if you add anything to it or any comment, and then it disappears, and you watch if you comment on it as it goes. It's about awareness. It's not about correcting anything. If there's any kind of movement to stop, start, or shut down on anything, that reinforces a part of consciousness aligned with a body-mind complex called ego or narcissism or pride. That's the hardest one to see is pride, because it certainly doesn't look like we're full of ourselves. That's how pride operates, to be very humble, be very low-key. Not me, I don't deserve credit for anything. Very difficult to find that and expose it. Sure.
Judge, how do you look at the belief in a self when it seems so hard to see around?
It's good. I think it's just based on having been introduced to this path in 1973 by my teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche. My first 10, 15 years are just excruciating. In that very area, there's no progress here. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm miserable. I'm fighting with I have to say it this way, wives. I'm fighting with everybody. It's just very, very painful. I don't mean to go back and elaborate on that, but because I want to come back, I want to use that as a little bit of a foundation for what I'm about to say. I think it's just persistence. For me, it's just stubborn persistence. I'm going to do this no matter what. For me, and maybe not for everyone, but for this student, it was about my teacher. Without that teacher, I would not be here. Without both of those teachers, I would not be here. Both in different ways, but I couldn't do this just by reading a book by Ramana Maharshi or Dogen Zenji or any. I'm not saying that that there aren't amazing teachings out there. Of course there are, just astonishing teachings. I've been reading them since the 60s, but it wasn't until I met Trungpa that something about him, just not anything particular that he said that I can quote, but I think it's something about it. I felt like I was going to have to persist at this if I was going to understand it. And he actually told me that I could. Somehow that meant a lot, even though it's just me expressing my negativity to him and him saying, you can do this, you can do it. I tend to say that same thing to people who are frustrated. And I say it because I know they can. I know it. I don't believe it. I don't believe anything.
Is there something to look at beyond the sense that it's impenetrable?
Look that it is impenetrable. This is why we look at a wall or look at a floor. You don't have to closet door or a wall or something like that, but look at something where nothing is moving and then watch what happens. Watch the mind stream continue to churn up stories, ideas, conclusions, opinions, memories. It's just a flood of otherness. It continually reinforces the belief that there's a separate being here in this particular lifetime named Shanjian or named Sokuzan, that we're here and this is happening. And this is, I'm going to see the doctor tomorrow, and then the next day I'm going to do this, and have all our, like in your situation, being an attorney, you're just filled with all kinds of otherness going on that you need to keep track of. Isn't that true? And it gives you a place to hang your hats, place to work on it, to make a living and so on. But when you come to the cushion, just observe. Come to the cushion, don't push that away. And actually, if you were to sit down for 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and suddenly ideas about work show up, that you need to send an email to so-and-so or something that you'd forgotten about, maybe you need to get up and go do it. That's a possibility. And also, perhaps, depending on your understanding of what's happening, maybe you should just sit there and just ruminate about that. There's nothing to correct. It's just an amazing idea that I worked with for decades before I understood. I don't know how I understood it. I just stopped fighting with everything. So I'm listening to this voice. I have no idea who it is. There's no particular identity here other than one you give me. Sokuzan. And then people do whatever they need to do with it. I do the best I can. I'm not always that good or that accurate working with others. More about that if you have it.
Shanjian, when it feels like I'm looking at the sense of self, but it feels like there's more to be seen, but I can't see anything.
There is. There is. The more to be seen is a way of talking about emptiness. No, but it won't show up as items or things. the more to be seen, is getting close to that kind of understanding. That the only word for it is wisdom. But you may have to look at that for years. Well, you may have to look at it for 6 months, I don't know. But that's what's there. That's why I'm trying to, based on what you're saying, I'm just encouraging you. Don't look for results, just whatever shows up, just receive that. You don't have to even look for that. You want to look for something, look for your cushion, look for the wall, don't step on the cat. Carmen,
Carmen Belling. When we see ourselves correcting, maybe to the point of like self-flagellation and stuff, what do we do?
well, you're not anything I'm gonna say that's particularly new. I say, you're going to have to set a lot. I don't know how much you set now, but find time to, doesn't have to be here, find time to find a place where there's nothing happening but just you and the wall, or the closet door, or the chest of drawers, or whatever it may be. Sit down, hold still, and watch with your vision what's not moving, and then listen. There might not be much noise, or maybe there's vehicles out on the road, or a radio coming from another room or something, but not much. And then just watch that, just observe that, and then anything that comes up like self-flagellation or beating yourself up over something that occurred, just observe it. Just, I don't know how else to say it more succinctly or accurately or precisely or definitely, that whatever shows up needs to be looked at, not twisted or bent or moved this way or that way. Or there's no praise, no blame. There are no separate beings anywhere. But that's not something we can kind of talk ourselves out of or talk ourselves into. It's something that has to be seen by each person, and you can do that. And the thing that makes it so hard, it isn't like, studying chemistry or taking tests and getting results. That's the relative world, and that's very powerful, and that's very convincing. This is an area where there is no test. There is no result. There's just reality, and it's just wisdom. And your very nature is wisdom. But with you or me or any of us, it's just covered up by hope and fear and right and wrong. It should be what we've been told, what our society tells us, trying to prevent us from seeing our true nature. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm in this room. People either come and benefit from this, or they have lately had a lot of people think that I'm not doing so well. So, but that's not wrong. People are doing the best they can with what they see. And I do the best I can.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from Jishin?
Machine bowing. If I question my beliefs, am I supporting the ego? Bowing.
Good question. A little bit. The idea is just be aware that you believe, or be aware that you dismiss or disbelieve things. Just be aware of that. You have a kind of an inbuilt or natural predisposition to just not believe that, or to believe this, or to ignore that. Just be aware of that as much as you can. As far as questioning your beliefs, there might be something to that, but I wouldn't make that into a lifelong project. Don't question your beliefs. Just be aware that you believe. And if you're really aware that you have beliefs that you feel are fundamentally true, if you continue to look at that, it will start to come apart more than likely. I'm not saying next year or 3 years from now, but the illusion cannot withstand observing. Any other question from anyone? Any question online before we close, or before we go back to sitting? Very good. Okay, we can close then. With the floor, no? What do we do next? I don't know what to do. It's only been 4 weeks.
Dedication of merit.
Who's gonna help us with that?
May this penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san shi shi hu shi song hu sa moko sa moko the 10 directions of 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
Okay, everybody go back and face the wall.